In this video, you're going to learn how we built a 44K pipeline in just 30 minutes using our precise targeting and segmentation methods. All right. Just so you guys see what we're talking about here. Today is April 29th here. One of our most recent campaigns that we actually just launched, as you can see here, 45 replies and opportunities that were positive from just 1,500 emails here. So the resonance is pretty wild, right? When you do the calculations here, it's 1520 divided by roughly 45. That's 1 out of every 33 emails that said, yes, I'm interested in more. And you may be wondering, like, well, what did you do to get these types of results and 80% positive reply rate, basically, right, from all these responses? Well, that's what we're going to go over here in this video here today. All right. So to get into targeting, essentially, why does most targeting fail? When you think of outreach, there's really three pillars, right? The first one is, of course, deliverability. The second one is the targeting / the list. And the third one is the copy, what you're saying to that list, right? And making sure it's delivered. So all of them play together. But a lot of people make the mistake of basically finding these generic industry lists on larger databases, right? Some are, for example, like Apollo or Zoom Info, right? Or maybe like a lead reseller, where there's just not a lot of context within what you can actually be saying and personalizing all these pain points. So they also use a lot of like templated messaging, right? So you're probably having like the same template be sent out essentially for all the prospects, and you're not personalizing the pain point or segmenting out the types of messages to which segment of that audience that you should be sending. And on top of that, you're not really segmenting on pain points or benefits or things like that nature. You're just trying to segment mainly based on the roles, right? And that doesn't really work because roles have such a dynamic shift in each company, and sometimes each role is completely different in what the actions of that person actually are. On top of that, you have insufficient data validation and cleaning, so that's part of deliverability. People maybe don't really use popular tools that we'll cover a little bit in this video, and they're really focusing on just sending more emails, right, instead of the quality. In the end, you are sending a message to one person, basically, right? So you want to make sure that that message is really relevant for that person, and it's personalized to their use case. So that's kind of what I've been teaching here in my YouTube channel. In case you guys haven't seen this before, I teach the CESRP framework. Essentially, it's context, enrichment, segmentation. That's what we're covering in this video, relevancy, and personalization. Now, the targeting gap, essentially the generic approach where people are starting to spray and pray and they just kind of send the same message, maybe slight little tweaks all over again. Usually it doesn't work out too well for them, right? And on top of that, there's a ton of other pitfalls that they might be encountering with like meetings booked or trying to like just ask for a meeting outright, right? It's just not how cold emails are used. So when people are doing that type of approach, they typically get 0.5%. Sometimes we see as high as 2%, and that's pretty high for that type of approach. But when you do a really segmented approach, like I just showed you on the campaign earlier, you can see that it resonates a lot more. And we got already, double response rate of this, and that was just off of one email, guys. Just to look at this example here, right? This was just step one. 760 emails sent, we got 32 replies, and 27 of those were positive. 760 sent here, 24 replied, 18 of those were positive, right? Pretty high resonance rates when you segment it out. And this is the 7th segment that we did, right? So you can see we were testing a lot of different angles and a lot of different segmented approaches to get that higher resonance within that market, as well as the engagement that comes with that, right? So in terms of actually building a quality prospect database, you want to look at multiple data sources. You want to look at everything basically outside of the giant directories like Apollo. You want to look at places where you get a lot of context, and maybe even places where you'd actually have to enrich the rest of the content. So you can think about where are the people that are hanging out that use a specific tool, or where are the people hanging out that have a specific need or pain point or want to learn something in particular. Maybe they attended a conference, right? Maybe they're on a directory, on an industry directory, right? So from there, you want to verify every one of those emails because standardly, as you enrich them and you find those emails, even after you use something like Clay or you use some other enrichment tool, around 50 to 40% of those leads are actually going to just have bad emails, meaning they're not in use anymore. Maybe they're like info at emails. You don't really want to target those. You want to find the people that are actually engaging in those emails day to day, right? That's really how you're going to get the highest deliverability engagement before your message. You want to actually complete company information and accurate contact details for those specific audiences. So you want to make sure through different verification sources, right? The best way to do this, honestly, is to find where a group of people are hanging out, find their LinkedIn profiles or enrich their social profiles, and from there you can get those really high quality emails, right? So there's really three levels of verification though that you can do. That this goes a little bit deep into what maybe most people don't need from this channel, but the syntax validation, so like format and domain existence, domain verification, so MX records, mail servers, things that are within the DNS records, right? And the last one is the mailbox verification, which is like SMTP, and the catch-all detection, right? But if you want to make this all easy for yourself, like we do, essentially you want to use some pretty key verification tools like Million Verifier, Zero Bounce. There's a couple other ones out there, Never Bounce, Clear Out, Rion. There's a million of them, right? What we personally use at our growth agency is Million Verifier. Just currently, we've found that it has the best deliverability results, and it's just our tried and true, honestly, from throughout the years. So when you're doing the micro segmentation strategy, though, right? So beyond basic segmentation of like just industry or company size and their title, right? You really want to go into the pain points, the benefits, the types of tools they're using, the types of content they're consuming, the types of different types of budgets, priorities, timelines. You really need to understand the customer so that then you can develop the segmentation that you might not even think of at the time from a top level down, right? When you see everything that goes on in a prospect's day-to-day life, that's when you can start to make those assumptions and group those bunches of actions together, right? So some key examples here is like we like to do whenever there's a really large database, we like to split it up into 3 to 10 segmented audiences based on a pain point, a priority, a value prop, maybe a certain team size or a team dynamic, certain types of use cases as well that they might be using like tools, right? And as you guys saw, like that was our seventh segment of the other campaign, and that's the one that really, really clicked. So we were testing out multiple hypotheses there. But for some industries, maybe you want to group them all into like a larger criteria first, maybe like SaaS, manufacturing, healthcare, different types of pain points and audiences for those things. For growth stages, there's different pain points for a seed startup, right? So someone that just got funding versus one that's like raising their third round, right? So those priorities and timelines, that's a way to segment as well. And then another way is, of course, like the buyer role. And there's multiple things that you can stack together within a segmentation analysis, essentially, where it combines into a different segment, right? One of my favorite things to do, though, is incorporating a bit of AI into your segmentation. So if you know that maybe you're looking for companies that uh, are using or have a form to fill out on their website, right? You're probably not going to find that on Apollo. You're not going to find that in a larger database. That's something that you're going to actually have to research on each lead at scale using AI. And then you can see like on a yes, no binary scale, right? Do they have a form on their website, or are they a product led SaaS where they have a subscription tier, right? And that level of enrichment combined with segmentation allows you to have different value propositions for each essentially segment, right? And that's just one example. There's many examples that you can do. Some of the examples other than that are like we segment a lot based on search traffic as well. So like if a website has below 10K search traffic, they're probably having these pain points for growth, right? Whereas if they're doing 100K plus, they probably have different priorities like optimization, right? Much different parts of their timeline. So we like to do a couple different personalization matrices though on a high level at our organization. Essentially, we do segment level personalization. So things like I just described there, broad strokes. role-based personalization, so for those specific pain points, but to that person, not necessarily just the role title, right? Company-specific personalization, so situations that they might be in. Maybe they just raised the funding round. Maybe they're in seed versus Series B or B or D, right? Um, human, sorry, individual level personalization as well. That's something like if somebody posted about some type of pain point, or if somebody's engaged in a specific type of content, that's something that could be really useful there as well. For AI personalization, you can do really specific templates that identify those personalized variables, like we just mentioned with those form fillouts, right? You can use AI to also generate those customized variables for, like, hey, I saw you guys had a form fill out for this type of thing, right? Uh, that allows you to also segment out based on the content that it produces what type of group it is, right? Maybe it's a healthcare solution, maybe it's a different type of form that is more for compliance. And these two things are a completely different pitch, right? So you really want to understand those customers in depth as much as possible as you're doing that. Then make sure it makes sense, right? So double check your work. Of course, like the human review portion of this is really critical as you're processing like what segment is assigned to which message and seeing how resonating it would be. And then once you actually launch those campaigns, you want to have that feedback loop to improve and see the different types of segments that resonated or did not resonate, right? So in terms of quick implementation strategies, so number one, define your ideal customer. Basically, identify those key target industries and segments based on what you can define from above, like the examples I had here. All right. From there, you want to select the data sources. Data sources being groups, tools, places they engage, different types of communities, and then you want to start scraping, right? After that, you start scraping, you start enriching, you find their details, you start to segment them out into micro segments based on the criteria that are the most valuable for your piece. You develop segment specific messaging to each of those groups, and then you personalize that specific segment to your specific audience, right? And to that person. From there, you test in small batches. I would say you want to do 10% of your segment typically to see if it resonates. If it does, then that's the perfect time to start to build out more of your sales assets, because now you have a proven funnel, right? You analyze those initial responses, you see what happened to the negative ones, what happened to the positive ones, and you scale those segments essentially from there. You turn on the funnel and you start capitalizing and starting to do your reply management frameworks, right? So there was a pretty key case study for this, right? So what we did was there was like 50K contacts that we scraped from all these groups with pretty generic messaging at first that our clients were doing. They didn't really have like a pretty good reply rate. They had like 0.8% reply rate, and there was no clear industry focus on where they needed to target or what exact segment of that industry they needed to target. So we came up with 12 different solutions that we thought might click for these audiences, and we focused on 3 primary sub industries from these 12 microsegments. And we created really role and person specific messaging after we implemented the 3 factors of personalization, right, within that campaign. And overall, like, it was night and day, right? The moment that we found exactly what clicked in that niche, then we saw reply rates as high as like 6.8% here. The top segment even had 11%. Some of the other ones, and this is actually something I'll talk about in other videos, right, is it necessarily doesn't matter your reply rate. Sometimes it matters more about your positive reply ratio, right? So if you get 100 leads from 100,000 emails, yeah, it's pretty low resonance. But if 100% of those are, you know, positive, well, then you have 100 leads, right? Still, and you can get similar results from, let's say, 2,000 emails if you were to run this campaign continuously, right? So we experienced this throughout a couple different campaigns. We generated a lot of pipeline based on these focus segments and the clear data that follows each segment. So pretty key takeaways here, just to kind of wrap up the video. You want to start with 3 to 5 segments that are really, really niche and really focused on their pain point and benefits, right? It's better to do this really well researched for 3 than to do it mediocre on 5. All right. Build your lists. Purchase lists typically have poor quality, like Apollo. So you want to go outside of the box. You want to start to find where your customer hangs out and really pitch them a quality offer that's like worth their time to invest, their time into essentially. Of course, you want to keep your data fresh for deliverability. You want to have like Million Verifier, Reon, Never Bounce. There's a bunch of tools out there for that to make sure you're not landing in spam and you're not hurting your domain's deliverability down the line. And then like here's just like a couple really minimum viable data points that we use, of course, for almost any campaign. You gotta have the full name, you gotta have their email, maybe their accurate title that's current, their company size or range, their industry, what they're in, right? We like to AI enrich this one actually a lot and hyper segment that one. And then at least one personalization hook within your short email. And most emails that we create are less than 35 words, less than 50 words. And that one hook is basically your entire value prop, right? People today have a lot of noise in their lives. So you have to be really, really direct, relevant, and personalized based on that segment, right? So hopefully this video helps you guys out, kind of going over more of the list targeting and how you're supposed to segment for emails in terms of ideas. Let me know if you guys are getting similar results to like what we're doing here. We're getting some pretty good results, and see you guys in the next video.